Roadshow, episode number 407. My name is John Morgan. Cold coffee is with me, and back in the building once again is Hot Tea himself, Oscar Willis, undefeated amateur fighter. And I might say, frosty beverages in hand. It's been a while since we've all had a little cold beer together, guys. It's good to see you again and hang out a little bit.
Fancy beer too. Look at you.
I
need to get the award-winning stuff back. Because honestly, like
I'm right here.
Since we
Didn't win it.
since me and Morgan been taking it easy on a lot of these ones, it hasn't been the big push to like restock it. And then today I was like, oh, I don't really have anything. And John was like, oh, that's fine. You know, I got to go watch Eli practice later on. I was like, okay, cool. We don't need anything. And then I saw Oscar, and I was like, Oscar, you want to come over? And then immediately was like, fuck, I don't have any beer at the house, you know. But
well, I got to say, this is going down very easily.
It's really, really good.
Yeah, I mean, get on that beverage director. I mean, the whole estate over here has got to be stocked at all times. I'm sure the beverage director
going to pop up.
I'm sure the beverage director was just thinking, listen, we don't have anything on the books. You know what I mean? So I didn't have anything ordered. There's nothing. I checked out the estate management software and did not see any.
There was no orders
pending,
in there.
you know. But he's got to be aware because, hey, man. Folks
Shit
like us,
off,
we just, spur of the moment. Things got to happen.
I mean, when you're this big time and you're rubbing elbows with award-nominated dudes right and left, I really should be better about that. I'll give him some lashes later on and make sure that
he's doing his best over there. But just let him know the expectations are a little bit higher. All right, listen, we've got some MMA to talk about. Which let me just say first of all, thank God for that, man. I mean. This off period and everything that's been going on, I mean, as much as we asked to have a little break and we're like, yeah, man, it's every week. It's relentless. I sure wish we had a little off season or something just so we could plan some vacations and all. Man, I don't know if it's – I mean, A, I don't know what to do with my Saturdays anymore, but B, I just think the nature of all the news and everything that's been coming out and the passings that we've had to deal with, and it's just been like, dude, let me get back to some fights.
Well, it's always the same, right? You go away, you've been begging for the holiday, and then when you get the time off, which was like 3 weeks for us this time, about 4 days in, I'm already craving the routine. You can only masturbate so many times, John, before you get bored. And that was 4 days for me. But it's nice to come. And then it's funny, right? You come back and then, media day starts dragging on. You're like, maybe, like, listen, if 10 of you can't get in there, we can go.
I will say this. It was pretty funny at media day today because it was a little bit later start than normal. We were at media check-in was at 10:45. Normally we're out there around like 9 or something like that. And I noticed that by like 10:15, all of us were already there because everybody's bored and like I have not had anything to do, and I'm ready to get there. And it turned out to be a pretty memorable media day.
Well, that's the thing, right? So I decided this year, every event I cover, I'm going to just like write a few paragraphs of what that fight week was. And before today, I was like, damn, a lot of those weeks are going to just say was at the Apex, was shit, going home, But when Dana White, who came out to speak to us, as I'm sure we're about to get to, I remember thinking like, this is unique. This is a unique situation, and that's you get a buzz or a rush from like you think on your feet very quickly when stuff like that happens, and that happening today made me sort of think, this sport still has surprises 30 years into it.
It does. So all right, let's get into this because. We're all well aware at this point, anybody listening to the podcast, of the incident that happened on New Year's Eve in Mexico. Dana White was obviously filmed in a physical altercation with his wife. She slapped him. He slapped her back twice, from what we've seen on the video. He immediately comes into TMZ the next day, apologizes. I think everybody has rightfully said, well, isn't that convenient? TMZ, of all places, like not only do they air the video, but they immediately air the rebuttal and the reply. I mean, clearly an orchestrated effort to address things, which – say what you will about whoever you will. It happens. Understood. Yeah. They did their best to get ahead of the situation, and they got it done from the UFC side.
Did you catch the point where he said they sent the video to TMZ? Did you catch it? Did I hear him wrong?
The UFC sent the video to TMZ?
He made it sound like he sent it.
I think
he said we sent the video to him.
He said he
and
sent
then
the
we
video
sent
to his kids.
Yeah, that's what
so I think.
Okay.
Yeah,
I thought he was saying like he sent the video to TMZ.
He was saying we sent the video to them like.
I was surprised.
I thought his kids were with them, but I guess they just sent them a video and then spoke to them on the phone. Again.
Okay, so I misheard him. I thought he was saying that they were the ones that tried to get ahead of it by sending it to TMZ and then followed up with the interview.
I would assume that if they got that video at that point, they would have just buried it and paid money to
it's funny. I had thought, and I will say something I did think about it one time over the past week and a half and forgot to ask today is was he ever offered an opportunity to pay for the video?
Yeah, well, that's when the video came out. I was like, damn, like how much were TMZ asking for that they couldn't buy it? But maybe it was just too salacious for TMZ to really like. Maybe if TMZ were worried if it ever came out, they did that.
Yeah.
That it would have. I mean, not that their reputation's great, but maybe they thought that was just a step too far.
Right.
I always guessed. I want to be clear that I guessed. TMZ got the video, went to them.
I'm sure.
And they did that. But.
So that happens. Obviously, there were some fair criticisms of like, well, hold on, you didn't actually face the media as a whole. You faced basically what is essentially a broadcast partner. This was clearly pre-planned. There were some criticisms of the questions that were asked and that sort of thing. So, I think a lot of people were looking forward to UFC President Dana White speaking to the media again. Now, I will say, last week I actually put in a request to the UFC, and I said, hey, I don't know if this is possible. I know that Dana doesn't normally come to media days, but is it possible that you ask him if he'd be willing to come speak to us at the media day, and so that we can address this? Because I think a lot of us did have questions to ask. Now, I'll be honest with you. I filed that request with the assumption that it would be like, well, thank you for the suggestion, sir, but no, he will not be there. I wondered if maybe I put that request in because I thought I would like to address this as quickly as possible. I did think, well, the fallback is if he doesn't come Wednesday, we'll try to get him at post-fight. But I kind of wondered if he was going to be at post-fight either, I
didn't think so. I honestly didn't think we'd see him until Perth. I really thought it was going to be like that long.
So the request was in. Now, nothing was said. We show up today, as I said, we're all enthusiastic. Everybody's there early. We're talking. We're getting caught up. We haven't seen each other in a couple weeks. How was your New Year? How was your Christmas? As we're all setting up our cameras and getting ready, knowing that, we got 10 fighters to speak to. 5 of them don't speak English, so it's not going to be the most engaging. Sometimes when you go through the translators, it doesn't get quite as exciting. So we're all like, all right, we're here. I'm sure Sean Strickland's going to have some craziness to say. And all right, we'll get ready. And then we noticed a couple television crews start walking in, right? Just the bigger cameras, the ones that are from television stations. And at that point, I think we all kind of looked at each other like, you think maybe he will show up? And it was still like, nah, he's not gonna. Like, maybe they're just here on the off chance that maybe he'll be here to speak about it. They don't normally come to these media day things. Maybe they just think he's gonna be ever. Maybe the pay-per-views to some degree, but never the fights. But maybe even those, and even that's only like a Connor pay-per-view or something like that.
I think maybe Masvidal Colby is the only time I remember seeing cameras like that.
That's it. So, but we all started sitting there, and then. We were supposed to start at 11:45. I think it was, 11:45 rolls around, and there's no, we were not quite starting just yet. Even though I had seen Roman Kopylov, who was first in the building, it's like, what are we waiting on? And then all of a sudden I noticed too, I'm like, the entire PR team is here. Yeah. The entire PR team is not usually here for media day.
And also, I didn't see them. Usually, you get a PR person at the door shuttling guys in.
Right.
I noticed there weren't guys coming in.
Right.
There wasn't a stream of guys like usual, which meant I think they were putting them around, bringing them through another door or something. I don't know, but.
So then the back door opens, and it's the same door than the rear of the room that Dana normally comes in for post-fights, whether it be Dana White's Contender Series, whether it be the UFC Fight Nights, and we look around and say, oh, Dana is here. Yeah. Comes in, sits down. I wouldn't say it looked like he had some notes with him, but I wouldn't say he read a statement. I mean, it was pretty off-the-cuff candid. Maybe he had some points there he wanted to make sure he touched on.
I think he had a statement, and then when he sat down and it was the old familiar faces, I think it just felt natural to go into.
Just read it off, and basically the statement was, hey, reiterating what he said in the beginning, which was there is no excuse for this. I am sorry for what I did. I will have to live with this. Did make the point, which was something I definitely wanted to ask him, which was, there are people that have come to your defense and said, she hit you first, so it's kind of whatever happens. I have stated the case. I do not believe that's the case. Now, it does not make his wife right, and you can't say, well, it's just fine for a woman to slap a man. It's not. It's not okay. But what's even worse is for you to retaliate. And a lot of people were saying, no, he's kind of clear, man. She hit him. He's got a license to do that. And he addressed that right off the bat without, even being asked about that, and said, listen, do not defend me. Don't defend me. And the other thing I really liked that he said in his statement was, that, hey, I kind of want to do this and take the onus off the fighters today to talk about this. And he said straight up, like, look, if the fighters want to talk about me, if they want to talk trash, feel free to, they can feel free to do that. But I'm going to address this myself so that the fighters don't need to. Because I think it would have been more key to ask fighters what they thought if we didn't get what Dana thought.
Every single fighter would have got asked.
Right? But
every single fighter.
But because he did it, it was like, well, now we hear from Dana, like, who really cares what these athletes
Not
have
one
to say.
fighter got asked. Not one fighter got asked.
He gets done with the statement. I'll be honest with you. I started to grab the microphone. I wasn't sure, because I could very easily see he just says, thanks very much. Enjoy the media day. But to his credit, he stood and took the questions that we had to ask. Now, listen, whatever I say from this point on, I already know haters are going to hate. There's people that don't like me for the way that I ask questions or don't like whatever. That's fine. My biggest concern here was, hey, what is your position on this? Are there going to be any repercussions for it?
Yep.
And is there anything you can do moving forward? Now, I would say, as far as him taking the blame for this and not deferring anything at all, I think no matter if you're a Dana White hater or a Dana White fan, me personally, I think you have to give him a lot of credit for just saying, no excuse. When I say no excuses, no excuses.
Yep.
Today he didn't even mention, alcohol was involved or anything like that. It was just, I did this wrong. I said you don't do it. You don't do it. Now, will there be any repercussions? Now, I've talked about this both here and on the other podcasts I do as well.
We won't mention that.
We won't mention that one. It's the NBA's Memphis.
I thought you were my friend.
But no, listen. I said from the beginning, I don't really understand what a suspension would accomplish. If I'm being honest with you, I mean, the man is wealthy beyond wealthy.
Yep.
Has an incredible house. Has incredible access to everything. Like the man taking time away is not going to do anything to him. It's not going to make him change anything. It's not going to make him, realize anything. I don't think that he doesn't realize already. And it's not going to affect him financially. Now, I will say Eric McMahon, my co-host on the other podcast that we won't mention, I did say he had one idea that I did agree with. And he said, you know what, John, I hear what you're saying, but I agree with you, or I disagree with you. I would like to see a suspension, and I would like to see the suspension include the money that he would have made during that time be redirected to like domestic violence awareness, domestic violence victims. And I said, you know what? I like that. If that's what the option was for Endeavor to do, I think it would be a stellar option. But other than that, I don't know what it would really accomplish for Dana White. He's admitting error. He's saying he made a mistake. I don't think it's going to accomplish anything. Now, the only part that I thought fell short today is that I said, okay, got that. Because he said, look, no, my punishment is that I've got to be labeled for this the rest of my life. My punishment is that, now my reputation has been irreparably harmed. Now people are going to lose respect for me. Now people are going to talk trash about me, and I have to deal with that. And then I did say, okay, now a person in your position, great awareness that you have, what can you do moving forward? And he just kind of was like, well, I think we've done something here to raise awareness.
Yeah.
And I thought, that part I thought fell short. I really would have liked to seen Dana White and the UFC rally around doing something in terms of domestic violence awareness, domestic violence victim assistance. Now, again, behind the scenes, Dana does do a hell of a lot of charity work, and I'm sure there probably will be something. But I think it would have been a good idea to do something moving forward.
Yeah, it's a weird one, right? Because I feel that if Dana had, say, donated, and I like the suggestion that he takes suspension, that money goes. I'm not suggesting that's a bad suggestion, but if Dana donates money to a women's shelter, everyone's going to say that's see-through. You're only doing that to try to buy favor, which might even be a fair suggestion if that's the only reason he's doing it. So he's kind of damned if he does, damned if he doesn't. There, I would agree with you that I think actually if you look at this sport and any sport with lots of head contact, there seems to be this is not the first time we've heard domestic violence in the sport of MMA.
Right.
And I think it would be good if they had some facilities or if they help facilities that help women. I also think, and this is, I don't know who suggested this, I think it was in the room today, but I'm going to take the idea and don't criticize it for it. But if he says this is the first time and he was out of his mind drunk and this happened, maybe there's a part of him that thinks, damn, this really could just happen to anyone having a bad day. And I think maybe they should offer anger management to their fighters.
Yeah.
If their fighters are feeling like, I've got a girlfriend, she's doing my head in, I would like them to offer, say, not even anger management, some sort of mental health.
Yeah, some counseling type options.
Some sort of counseling for fighters. I think you can put them up in the PI. I think that's the thing, and you can, before anyone criticizes that idea, are we not aware that mixed martial artists are not the most well-adjusted figures in the world, right?
Well, that's the thing that I was immediately going to say is, boy, I bet it would take a long time to get athlete buy-in on taking advantage of said counseling resources. However, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't offer it.
We shouldn't. Yeah, exactly. And actually, you never know, right? There's another story going around in Mexico this week, Maybe people see that and they think, man, I've been lashing out recently. You never know. I think you should at least offer it. To be honest, and as a lot of our colleagues have said, I don't really know what the correct thing for Dana White to do was, because I think anything he did would have been criticised. I said to you, you see people saying, oh, so he's not going to even take a suspension. I feel like if he took a suspension, those same people would be saying, oh, he's just on vacation. This doesn't mean anything.
And he would be. I guarantee you, man. He's got an incredibly nice house that he would
be at the
enjoying.
Red Rock gambling.
He'd be gambling. He'd be sitting courtside at some basketball games. So, like, what does that really come? And I see to your point, too, about what a financial donation would do, because at what point do you feel it's a suitable enough amount that it matters to Dana White? You know what I mean? If he's out here playing $10,000 hands of blackjack and he donates $100,000, that's what $100,000 is a lot of money. Do you really feel like that's punitive?
Therein lies. Is it a punishment for the guy who gambles $1 million on a hand of blackjack?
No.
So,
and that's why I thought, I would like. I mean, if he could donate his time, you know what I mean? Like, obviously. Donating time. Now, what can he do exactly? I don't know, but I'm sure these they can do something with these organizations donating time. And I thought maybe the organization getting behind it, man, because for the most part, as you said, man, we have a lot of concerns and issues, and we had domestic violence issues in the sport of MMA. But I do think mostly that athletes do kind of preach the fact that, like, hey, man, you're fighting here, but you don't fight out there. Yeah. We're not getting paid for it. You know what I mean? And granted, that doesn't mean that they always adhere to it, but it just seems like that's an easy enough message to try to spread. And again, I've seen it uphand personally, because I've talked about it a little bit, but my wife has collected things for two different women over the holidays who were leaving a abusive situation. They needed food, they needed clothes, they needed things to cook with, because they didn't have it, because they basically just ran out the house because they were scared. And so, like, now I see, like, man, if there was some shelters that were really well stocked that could, like, help a woman get back on her feet again, maybe have some financial resources while she finds a job, especially because most of the time, I feel like, well, I shouldn't say that most of the time, that's overstepping because I don't know the knowledge, but I know in each of these two situations, there were children involved as well, you know what I mean? So now you've got somebody that's got a child to support, and they're taking the child out of the situation as well, because they don't want that child to be, put in harm's way in front of these abusive relationships anymore as well. So I don't know, I feel like it missed the mark there, but I guess what I would say is, now, all the criticism in the world is going to come our way. I know that. I've already seen a lot of it. Oh, yeah, way to really stick it to him or whatever. To me, to be honest with you, as far as Dana White's concerned and any questions towards him, like, this issue's done. If you still believe that ample change has not been made or ample things have, you got to start directing to Endeavor. You got to start directing to ESPN, Disney, because the UFC has made it clear. And I will say, Dana did say, hey, look, I've had conversations with Ari. We've had conversations with ESPN. Of course, no one's happy. But, it's if the answer is what's going to be done to Dana White, you have the answer now. If that was the question, the answer is now. Nothing is going to be done to Dana White. Now, if you're not satisfied with that, you believe that that's not enough, then the steps need to be taken forward to address it that way. But it's clear at this point this issue is done as far as these companies are concerned.
Yeah. I mean, and I've been one of the sort of less vitriolic about Dana in this situation, I feel, compared to some of the other media, but I would say there's been a serious hypocrisy from Endeavor and Ari Emanuel. Like, he's, as far as I'm aware, very liberal and very socially conscious, and very, their silence, I would say, is possibly the most damning out of TBS, ESPN, and stuff like that, But also, I'm afraid to say, the way of the world is people get special treatment, and when someone generates as much money as the UFC, as Dana White does with the UFC for these people, are you surprised they're saying nothing? I mean, you can sort of have this idea that these people need to say something, and they should say something. I asked Dana why they didn't put out an official statement. I think they should have. He said, oh, the TMZ thing is as good as. Yeah, but optically, it is different when you put something on a letterhead piece of paper. It's just that different. But are we surprised? I didn't expect anyone to have a comment. At all, ever. In fact, I was surprised they even pushed that back.
Well, yeah, right. I was
surprised they did that.
I see the comparison a lot that any league commissioner would have stepped down already. And the thing that I point out in that, and it goes back to exactly what you're talking about, is it always comes down to money. It always comes down to money, right? The difference between a league commissioner is he's got these 32 different team owners who are all protecting their own financial interests through their franchises that are concerned about, what if my advertisers leave? Yeah. What if and so the reason that the commissioner of a league would be held accountable is because he's answering to 32 different owners who are saying to him, bro, you're affecting my income here. Like, you need to go. Yeah. I can't have anybody that's potentially messing with my income. Because it does not boil down to morals. I'm sorry. Like, in situations like this, it does not boil down to right or wrong. I mean, Dana White has stood and sat there and said, I am wrong. And again, I'm not going to applaud him for slapping his wife, but look, he said I'm wrong, and don't try to defend me. Please don't. The people that are defending don't. So I mean, he's accepted responsibility and accountability. I just think when people try to make that comparison to league commissioners, you have to understand it's two totally different setups. But the only reason that the commissioners would step down is not because they're somehow on some more moral high ground that they would realize, gentlemen, I have made a transgression that has appalled me to the point that I must, step down. It's because those owners would be like, bro, you're risking my money right now. Yeah. You need to get out of there.
And by the way, it has been forever and will likely continue to be. Combat sports is the dirty grandchild of sports. It always has been, and it continue. And maybe people think the more high profile it gets, it'll get out of that. No.
Yeah.
But it's a sport that revolves solely around violence. The thing that gets people most heated is when they think that violence is coming from an evil and nasty place towards the other person. It's not a sport where people are going to play nice or do nice things. I'm not saying that. So fucking anyone can do whatever they want. But my point is, you can't apply the same standards to the NFL as you can to boxing or MMA, because no one gives a fuck in boxing or MMA. They think they do, but realistically, people do care, but the general populace who watches it, they don't.
Yep.
And my evidence for that is all of history.
Yep, I agree. Now, I've said it from the beginning, and I'll say it now. If Endeavor decides they want to remove him, I can't blame them.
Me neither.
If ESPN decides
nor could Dana.
Nor could Dana. If ESPN decides they don't want to do any business with him anymore, and so they want to remove him, that's their business. I would not complain. I would not sit here and say, what are you doing? You dropped the ball here. And I think even Dana, because somebody did ask, what kind of financial impact is this going to have? And he said, look, none so far, but I don't know. And that's 100% true, because maybe now people that were going to potentially step in and, work on this TV contract with them next time aren't going to want to work on a TV contract.
I mean, maybe ESPN turn around, they try and, the UFC to try and demand a fee, and the ESPN said, well, we'd love to pay you that, Dana, but, we don't know if we can trust you anymore, and we got to lower that by 50 million, You never know how these things play out.
So I don't know. I guess to sum up my thoughts or whatever, I thought that Dana did a pretty good job of addressing the situation today, and I think now at this point it kind of falls down on these other companies, and if you want to see more happen, then you need to hold them accountable, because I don't think trying to hold the UFC accountable at this point is going to do that. I think they've said their piece, they've made their position clear, and things are going to move on. Now, if it happens again. If it happens, if it's now a pattern of behavior,
there's no coming back if it happens again.
There's no coming back.
Oh, and right, fuck. If it happens again, then
there's no coming back at that point. I said,
at that point,
and I said if it happens in the workplace, no coming back from that. If it slapped an employee or something for some reason, absolutely got to get out. So, I know, like I said to start this, no matter what we say, it's not going to make people happy. There's people that are just going to say, no, I can't believe you're being this soft. It's because you're afraid of losing access. You're afraid. That's bullshit. I'm just telling you right now. I'm being honest with my feelings. I'm telling you, I applaud.
Oh, yeah, by the way, I wanted to draw attention to that. You're the one who asked for Dana and got him there today. So all these people that are saying you're too soft on Dana and stuff, the only reason we even heard from him is because of you. So,
Or the local news guys.
Who didn't say anything,
by the way. Who didn't say anything.
Yeah, well, you know what?
It's that Review Journal. I'm not Channel 13.
You know what, man? I'm not gonna sit here and try to pat the MMA media on the back too strong, but I will say that, hold on, man. Everybody criticizes us for being terrible at our job. Whole lot of local media there today. Shouldn't see anybody asking a question or trying to,
I'm not gonna say they would have got him, but I'd be curious to know, how many of the people shitting on Dana actually asked for an interview.
Right.
How many of the guys on Twitter being like, he's a piece of shit?
Did
any of them reach out?
It's just easier to go on Twitter and vent rather than actually do the thing. But, I mean, the biggest thing...
I'm sure some did.
And you're right. I think the biggest letdown for me, I applaud Dana for coming out, and as many as people were like, I can't believe you guys think. I was like, no, that was a really shitty situation that he could have done what he has been doing, which is
not show up.
Act like nothing happened. Yeah, he showed up... He gave the floor to people, and people got to ask their questions, and he answered their questions honestly. The only thing that I missed and I thought was lacking, and this is the unfortunate part of where he really controls the strings, is that while he feels that the UFC, their part is done, they don't need to say anything, it would have been nice to see them actually say something just to sort of set a precedent, because at some point in the future, there are going to be fighters that something's going to happen. And then what are they going to do? If they don't say anything, then it's almost like, well, they didn't say anything for Dana. I guess that precedent was set. That's not the right precedent you want to have set. Whether or not they don't have to go in and say Dana was a shit person or whatever, but at least stand up and say, while this situation is unfortunate, it's a private matter that's being handled. We do not, condone violence, blah, blah, blah. Just make a statement. Just say something. It's the silence that I think is what most people are deafened about and that are upset. You're right. No change is going to happen with the UFC. If you think something's going to happen now with the UFC and Dana's going to be like, guys, you're right. You're that tweet that you sent. You're absolutely right. I am a shit person. I'm going to take myself out of this for a while. That's not going to happen. I think you raised a good point. Endeavor, Disney, the guys that actually control the bottom line are the ones that Dana and the board and everybody's going to pay attention to. You start losing the dollars, but it just would have been nice for them to at least come out and act like what a normal company would say and say, we don't like this sort of thing. It's the silence that is what fueled everybody to just rage and rage and rage. And regardless of that, the man came out there today, whether you don't like what he said or if he didn't say enough and whether we didn't say enough, the man walked out there into the firing line, whether it was a soft firing line or a not firing line, he at least still showed up. He could have easily stayed in the back of the fucking venue and never came out there. So there is something into that. The guy walked out there and put himself out there. Was it the perfect situation? No. But was it a step in the right direction? It sure was.
You know what's funny, and it touches on something you said, Oscar, because you're right about what you said. Like, it was so weird that the company didn't issue any statement whatsoever, right? Like, you see, I think there was one as recently as like the last week or two. I believe it was an NFL team or something maybe put out a statement. But it is weird. But it kind of goes to what you said, right? Like, so the right thing to do is to make a donation, and then people say, well, it's just a donation. Yeah. It's kind of like those statements are very much like, we are aware of the issue. We are conducting a thorough investigation. And it's almost like, well, what does that even really mean? But it still means something,
right? What do people want? Like, that's the thing. Like, what are they really hoping for? Are you just because you want to see Dana grovel? You want to see Dana beg? You want to see him cry? What are you actually hoping for? Mm-hmm. Are you hoping that people out there that are going through the situation can get awareness? Like you said, is there things that can be said? Can people bring awareness to the things that are going out there? Could the UFC do something in that sense? Yes. I guess my thought and my question to all those are always wanting more and more and more against Dana. What is the end goal that you're wanting? Do you just want to feel better because you feel like, that's one on you, rich man that thinks you can get away with everything? I mean, I wonder what their hope. I mean, would they be satisfied if he came out, said his sorry, and then goes and does 6 months of community service while still doing his job? I mean, like, what is enough? What are they actually hoping? And that's just an honest dialogue. I mean, even the people that listen to this, what is enough for you? What should have happened? And realistically, because this sort of thing happens over and over out there in life. Do you expect everybody, when they make a mistake, that their life's living, their dream, everything should be done, and then we just lock these people away? Enough's enough? Or, like, what are you hoping to get out of it?
Well, so when it first happened, obviously I was pretty shocked. I was like, geez, this is pretty intense. And everyone got emotional. I kind of just sort of sat and I thought about it for a few days. And I didn't really, bizarrely, formulate a strong opinion in one way or the other. I just said, I don't really know. But when they didn't put out a statement, and I asked Dana today, like, would you have put out a statement if you could go back? He said the TMZ thing was essentially the statement. Like we said already, I think optically, just whacking a thing on your Instagram just looks better. I don't know why. You can't quantify why that looks better.
It just feels like we're taking this serious.
It's
we're
from
addressing
you,
this
not
as a company.
this media thing. So that was one of the things. But when they were silent, and then he started posting like "Fuck It Friday" and stuff like that. That's when I started formulating an opinion. That's when I was like, dude, what the fuck are you doing? Like now it looks like you're not contrite at all.
Deaf. That's where it felt like the UFC was being very tone deaf to the seriousness of the situation, and that's when I got kind of fired up. And it was like,
me too.
Again,
that's what got me.
Wow, that's really shitty. Because even when me and John talked about it last week, the thing I wanted to see out of this, I wasn't calling for Dana's head. I wasn't calling for him to lose his job. I just wanted him to step the F away from social media and work on what was important, and that was fixing his relationship with his family, making sure that they were good. If you need to keep running the business, keep running the business. I just don't want to see a Fuck It Friday. Yeah. I don't want to see the slap promos.
It's also just like tone deaf in terms of, but you'd think they'd wait a week. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just, I think maybe we don't know this, but I imagine the strategy probably from him as well was just plow ahead. Yeah. I've already said sorry. We'll plow ahead.
Business cycle moves fast.
Yeah. We'll just.
Where else have we seen this recently? I feel like in politics we hear people just ask for forgiveness after the fact. They just barrel through it. But I wonder where he could have got that.
That to me was tone deaf. But then, we spoke about this, and when he was in the room today, I don't know if it translated across video. It certainly didn't seem to for some people. But when I was in the room today, I saw a dude who was genuinely sorry. And I don't think he was sorry he was caught. He looked like... Now, do I think he was crying himself to sleep?
No.
No.
But as someone who has dealt with hundreds and hundreds of hours of conversation with that man, that was an authentic Dana White.
He looked like... I don't know if I would even go as far as to say he was like, I'm devastated that I did this. But it looked like a man who was like, this is a really fucking shit situation that I created.
Yeah.
That's what people are never going to look at me the same.
Yeah.
That there's some people legit... And I felt that when he said that stuff, like he's like, people are going to look at me differently. I'm like, and you're absolutely right, and you deserve that.
Yeah, and I also think, look, the guys, we know what Dana's like, and he even sort of hinted at it today. One of the things that probably kills him more than anything is the ammunition he's given to his quote-unquote enemies, dude. Like, I guarantee when he saw certain people saying things about him and stuff, I bet he was seething.
I just wonder.
Because he knew they've got him,
And it's just like, it's never enough for some, say he stepped away and resigned. Are those people even happy? Or they're like, no, now the next step is you need to go and turn yourself in. You need to go now, step away. Like, it's never enough. I think people need to take a deep look in themselves and what are you really wanting out of this and why?
Yep.
Is it because you there are people out there that are suffering this, so you want to see one guy quit his job and you think that's enough to fix somebody else? Or would you rather see a better situation made from the platform or whatever? And I mean, that's the biggest letdown too. I'm glad he went out and said something, but I do not like the fact that he doesn't feel like with this instance and with the platform that you see that they couldn't do more. Yep. The fact that he's like, well, it's out there. We brought awareness. I'm like, no, you didn't really bring awareness.
Well,
the story's big, but you didn't bring awareness to the problem.
So two things I want to say right here. So I pulled up UFC.com because I saw this press release go out earlier today. UFC partners with American Red Cross to raise awareness for critical blood needs during National Blood Donor Month.
That's a great organization.
The organization, a great organization. I know that you've worked with as well. It is a great organization, and they do they work with a lot of great organizations in the community. I don't know why this couldn't be something that they add to their. And I think from my point of view, because I've said from the beginning, what I believe is that I would like to see some advocacy. From my point of view, I think that's what I'll continue to push with the UFC and the people I know. Say, hey man, what do you think about? Isn't there any way you could do this? Because I really do think Dana White. I think. Sometimes he doesn't even realize how big his platform is sometimes. I think guys like Joe Rogan, sometimes I don't think they realize how big the platform is and how what they say is so important and influential. That's what I'm saying. Like what they say that people really, really listen to. And again, seeing it firsthand this past month look, I have a little bit of a history of it in my own life, you know what I mean? But seeing it firsthand, like knowing what those resources could help, I think that I'll continue to push to the UFC. Because again, what do you want? I said from the beginning, I don't think Dana White needs to be pulled out of his job. I don't think that's the solution here. If it happens again, maybe. Not maybe. If it happens again, because now you've established a pattern of behavior. If it happened in the workplace, the first, absolutely. If you just slapped an employee, like, dude, what? You got to go. I don't think you should be gone, but I would like to see some good come out of it and see something be done out of it. So I think I'll continue to push with the UFC's team and see, hey, man, can this, again, you're pairing. It's not like they don't have a charitable brand and charitable organization, so they should. But I will say this, the other thing, so when I logged on to find that, because I wanted to suggest that, and again, that's what I'd like to see, I will say UFC.com posted the video. It says Dana White addresses New Year's Eve incident. So they actually did put the video up as well. So if it's not a situation either where they're like, hey, we'll let the media get whatever clips they need, but we're not going to put it on our own site.
Which has happened in the past. Mm-hmm. I just it does boil down to the fact of where you really feel the power vacuum of decisions being made a lot of times about the actual what word and the final vision that's coming out, the voice better of the UFC. You figure if there were some other people maybe on the same level as with Dana, whether that used to be Lorenzo or Frank and them, said, I know this is going to suck for you, bro, but we need to get out ahead of this. We need to put out a statement. You're going to eat crow, but we need to come out and say something. I just feel most people were just like, okay, this is the directive that we're feeling. Endeavor and WME and all these cats should have been like, hey, I appreciate what you're saying, bro, but we need to say something as a whole. I just feel like they still could have, and I feel that's the only part that kind of lacks with the current power structure there at the UFC, is that the buck fell and it ended at Dana, and Dana was like, well, we've done this, we said that, and even today he could probably, see guys, now I went one step further and I did this media day, so there, done and dusted.
Yeah, really, like it actually, I've spoken to people in PR, not just in MMA, but PR people in general, and they always say if you could not say something, try and take that option because it sort of prevents you from putting your foot in it. But I really don't understand why it would have cost Endeavor, the UFC, to put out a statement. No. Even if you wanted to keep it as light as we're aware of it, we're investigating it, we're internally discussing it, then people would fucking forget about it, to be honest. They should put out something.
If they thought the MMA was only in this little bubble that people weren't paying attention, I think all they have to do is start looking at the tweets and see the crossover from the media, crossover from the people in the other major sports that are paying attention. So if anything else, this is that eye-opening. It's like, guys, we're not in that little bubble. It's not just these few media that are paying attention. You can't have a big major thing happen and have it not make a big splash. That's how big the organization. This is not some small niche thing anymore. And that's where it still boils down to, they kind of dropped the ball a little bit in how they could have addressed it. But I'm still thankful that today happened. I'm grateful that he came out there and faced the public, and it's a step in the right direction.
I think
it's a step in the right direction.
I agree with you. You know what I was saying? What's going to be interesting is the next time there is a domestic violence situation in the UFC involving a fighter and how it's handled. And I do wonder, in some ways, it's like, and again, it goes about what do you want to happen. So, like, the next time there's a domestic violence situation, is what we want to see from the UFC is, hey, they take a hard stand on this and that fighter is released? Or is it, can Dana maybe even at that point of view been like, man, I've had to deal with this before and we need to get you some counseling or we need to get some.
His whole case-by-case basis, part of his answer to Amy when Amy asked, like, what happens when it happens again? He's like, this sort of happens case by case. I'm like, that's not really the greatest sort of answer.
It's pretty accurate, dude. Like,
in a sense, you have to look into it. But if
a shove isn't the same as
pulled a gun to a
ground and pound or something,
Yeah, but still.
But yes, I understand. Like, you would, and actually, when I said I would like,
I'd like to at least be a minimum.
Well, when I said I wanted, they should have put out a statement. I felt in that statement he should have said, I always said you never come back from this. Since then, we've sort of become a bit lenient in some areas. From this moment on, because of my own experience, I would like to say the UFC has a zero tolerance policy. That would have been the move, probably, if you wanted to be genuinely contrite and stuff. But then, as we said then it just takes one of your big names to do it.
Yeah.
And then you don't want to get rid of them. And then you can't have a zero tolerance policy.
Because
that's the way
the money.
That's the way the world
works.
So you can't do that.
And is it a difference because it never became a legal issue? It never became, a criminal issue?
Because they've had legal issues before, and they just say, we'll see how that plays out. And
well,
most of these people are wealthy.
I was going to say, the UFC's always used that for an excuse to stay out of it. Well, let's see it play out in the courts. Let's see it play out in this. And they use that almost as like an excuse to stay away. And I wonder if they have the luxury of being able to ignore more because it never made it to that situation. Say if it was a case where his wife did come out and didn't immediately apologize and then say we did see a court, or say if the courts down there or the police down there say, sorry, we're still going to file charges. Does that take it to a different level?
Probably.
Than just seeing what now
is
you
find
a
out
private incident.
That video was only a quick clip of what actually happened that night. There was way more that happened later on.
Yeah,
I think things can change or could change.
It's we've sat here speaking about this for however long, and it's just it's as murky as when you start. It's these situations are so just kind of how you as an individual feel about it, how your ethics and your morals view the world, how you think things should go. Should we allow things to go the way we know they're going to go, and all that sort of stuff. It's just a really murky issue. I think the only thing you can say that I feel like I can say with certainty today is he didn't have to come speak to the media. He came and spoke to the media. He wasn't a dick about it. He admitted he was wrong.
Yep.
And and again, I do think it was positive to speak out against the people who were defending him and say, don't.
Yep.
As far as John said earlier, as far as what Dana White can do in this state of affairs now, I think he's done it. Yep. So now, if you, like John said, if you want more, you have to go above.
Yeah, if you're expecting Dana to do anything else outside of this,
and
that's it.
If you're expecting them above him to do anything else, you're wrong. But if you want to try, those are the people you have to call.
Well, those that are our Patreon folks, this will be on the Patreon. I welcome you guys on the Patreon to start a nice dialogue. If you're just a regular listener, you can maybe tweet a little bit.
but
we might get to it. But really, though, the Patreon people, it'd be interesting. I mean, are we all crazy? I mean, are we completely in left field? Should we be a lot tougher? Start that dialogue once we get this on our Patreon, and let's continue the conversation there.
I love it. All right, we do have some actual fights to talk about. UFC Fight Night 217. The surprise change-up. Sean Strickland stepping in for Kelvin Gastelum, getting Nasruddin Imavov. Obviously unfortunate for Kelvin Gastelum. We've seen kind of what's going on with him and everything that he's got to deal with. Frustrating for him, I know, because he's been in the midst of some setbacks and really would like to get back to the win column. And I thought this was an intriguing matchup for him. Not an easy one by any stretch.
No.
Nasruddin Imavov is the real deal. And this becomes, for Nasruddin Imavov, I think, a bigger fight in a lot of ways. Now, I do think Kelvin Gastelum is the bigger name in the sport, just because, former Tough winner, former title challenger, he's been around a little bit longer. Sean Strickland, I think for the hardcores, people know some Sean Strickland, but I think Gastelum's the bigger name. However, Sean Strickland is in a better form. Sean Strickland is the one that's higher up the rankings, and so this is actually a unique opportunity for Nasruddin. We saw Sean Strickland today come in with his eyes dilated, which was wild,
Yes.
I guess came in, and I did wonder why he was wearing sunglasses,
Yes,
and then he
from the 1970s,
and then he did explain exactly why he was wearing the sunglasses.
And
then he went on to say a bunch of other weird stuff, including a story about Anthony Pettis and how he asked him if he was autistic, and then
Spider,
about his boy Spider.
It was very amusing to see a guy wearing massive shades being like, if you wear shades inside, you're a fucking cunt.
I'm telling you, it was.
I don't know what he was trying to get from that Spider story, the prison stories. I was like,
I'll
bro,
be honest, that was my question. I tuned out.
it came out of nowhere, and I was like, bro, you're not helping yourself in any means. Like, you're just giving more questions that people be like, this guy is completely off.
It was wild.
It just made no sense. The story made no sense. You didn't even need to use the
None whatsoever.
story.
He talked about the fact that he was asked to join the Aryan Nation, basically, and
it's like, bro, you're not adding anything to whatever the question. He's like, but now go back to the other question, which had nothing to do with that question.
And then honestly, was saying essentially that racism was involved in his loss.
He accused the judges of being racist because white people mark up more than black people do because black people's skin gets
black
tougher.
don't crack.
It gets tougher when they get
It's
punched.
so weird with him.
Also, he always just, whenever he wants to make a, we'll say, racially sensitive joke, he just says Chris Curtis.
Chris Curtis.
It's like a guy looking like Chris Curtis is like, okay.
He's basically turned it into it's terrible. So listen, the thing is and I always say this every time he fights, is that I have such mixed feelings about him because on the one hand, look, he really could do like crowd work as a stand-up comedian. Like he could have no material. Yeah, he does it with us. He could have no material, go into a club and just start going up. But the thing is, he goes so far overboard that like he would do it once and everybody would like kind of crack up and then he'd get canceled and there's no question about it. So he's back. We'll see. I did ask him. You didn't get much of a straight answer, but I did ask him, hey, given what happened in your last fight and your frustration with the judges, will you fight differently? And he's
It was like that odd laugh. I was like, what is he doing? I was like, oh my God, he's completely lost it. He completely lost it.
Wild,
and then he went on an answer that didn't really even like.
Well, he never talks about the fight. Ever.
Yeah.
Like, anytime you ask him about a fight, he's like, oh, you look like a fucking gay. It's just like, okay.
You get fucked in prison.
Yeah. He does. I think he thinks I'm quite pretty, man.
I know he thinks you're pretty.
Every time he comments,
I know he thinks
he's
you're
like,
pretty.
He keeps talking about
I don't know why he thinks I don't like him. I think he was just
man,
diffusing the situation.
Fucking Amy's Teflon whenever Sean's up there. He never goes near her, does he? He knows.
Stays away.
See, that's why I think like Sean's actually. He's like I think he's a guy who has an edgy teenager's sense of humor. I don't think he's actually a bad dude. I actually saw him sort of lead a practice at Extreme, and he was very mature and very like a leadership guy. I actually think Sean's probably, I don't want to say a pretty cool guy because God knows what he's going to do in the next 5 years.
Yeah.
But
his teammates love him. I mean, like you can't. Every teammate that we've ever heard speak on him, it's just like we said about many fighters. We get a version that is different than the fighters that see him when the cameras are not on, when the lights are not on. Every person that we've ever heard that talked about his work ethic and what he gives of himself when they train, they absolutely love this cat. It
did make me laugh that Puna and Dan were both like, yeah, we're going to fight for each other, and then both of them were like, and even Sean, like Sean's here too, like both of them.
Yeah, we were like that crazy guy.
Oh yeah, Sean, yeah, he's fucked, yeah.
All right, so he steps in on short notice, and meanwhile, his story about stepping in on short notice was pretty funny too. Where he's like, I didn't want to, but McMahon kind of talked me into it, and so he's like, we'll pay you a lot of money, so all right, I'll do it. And by the way, he did get to a point in that answer where he did say, I'll try to listen to my coaches more. That I'm not entirely convinced. He's like,
no, he's
Eric
got one direction.
Yeah, Eric said he'll kick me out if I don't listen to him. Like, he's still not going to listen to him.
Well, gun to the head, your picks on that one.
Imavov.
Yeah, man. I actually think Sean has sort of, I don't want to say quite found out recently, but I think, we always hear these talks of how he's like a really like aggressive sparrer and stuff. I'm starting to get the impression that that's the only speed he can go.
Exactly.
It's very, very slow and methodical in his fights, and I think if the guy he's fighting is athletic enough essentially to get past that. And doesn't fight to his rhythm. They
right.
seem to be at the moment seem to be winning.
Stand upright, roll with punches, throw the jab out there.
And
But
I think Imavov is actually a bit of a savage.
Yep.
I'm 100% with you. I think the quality and why he's able to pick up these like short notice fights is the same thing. Like he spars like he's doing a fight. And I saw a video the other day. He was in there with light heavyweight. Who was it? Gosh, I can't remember. Whatever. But he doesn't. It doesn't matter for him. Everybody that goes in front of him, he's going to go forward and he's going to throw those punches, which is great when he gets in here to fight another guy at a short notice. But I feel like he has a hard time switching out of that just super spar mode. He doesn't kick it into another gear outside of that, and that's what we see last time when he just didn't have the output that it felt like he needed. When it was the more devastating shots that were coming from Cannonier, and just felt like the boat never just got going. You know, he never got the motor going, and I just feel like there's a problem with the way that he just. I wouldn't say it's the mindset going these fights because he's ready to fight, but I just feel that. By doing some of this stuff, and maybe it's just the carryover from how he carries himself in the gym, where every time he goes in there and spar, it's almost like a fight. So he's comfortable to chop in another fight, but the difference between the two, he never gets out of that spar mode when the fight actually happens.
Light heavyweight make a difference, do you think, or not really?
I don't think so. To be honest with you, I think neither of these guys look like they're hurting tremendously. So
Well, the French guy at the media day said, do you think it's going to make a difference? It's like, well, it's 50-50, right? He might be a lot bigger, but he's a lot bigger because he hasn't been working out.
Right.
So it's trade-off.
Dominic Reyes, that's who it was.
Dominic Reyes.
Yeah. And, I mean, he looked good, but it was the same thing with what you saw in his last fight. I mean, like, he could take a punch. The dude can take a punch.
Absolutely.
And he has a great chin. I mean, and he walks forward. It's just, is it going to be enough when you get past a guy that's not going to just stay up there and just throw hands, you know? I mean, are you able to switch it out of that mode? I mean, I just don't know. I mean, I would love it if he shocks us and he surprises us and all of a sudden, like 2 fights in however many months this is, 2 months, whatever, is what was needed for him to get it going. I just don't feel confident that we're going to see anything outside of another great sparring session.
I'll tell you what, man, I'm a little bit surprised. Nasruddin Imavov, I'm looking at the lines, opened as a -170. Obviously, this line just opened because the fight just got put together. But in 2 days since it opened, it's been bet down to near a pick'em.
Yeah.
So that means the money's coming in on Strickland as a dog.
Well,
which that could be a
when they
situation where they
changed the
know
name-
Strickland more than they know Imavov.
I even thought the fact that they didn't change the naming to Imavov versus Strickland. Strickland takes the short notice, and then they gave him the A-side billing. I guarantee gamblers are looking at it and they're like, well, why did he get the A billing? Why did they get them? What do they know that we don't know? And I just felt like they immediately thought that the UFC was putting favors in him because he's getting the better favoritism. Once I saw that, I was a little surprised, and I immediately knew that was going to mess with the betting line.
It's interesting.
For sure.
To get a perspective of what we saw from Nasruddin today in Media Day, if you didn't catch his interview, first of all, while Sean Strickland was doing his interview, Nasruddin walked up to the glass door there and kind of like bowed up on him and was like staring at him. And finally, his team Sean never saw it.
I didn't see it either. I heard you guys talking about it.
Yeah, Sean had his glasses on, his eyes were dilated, so who knows how well he was seeing, but he didn't see it anyway out of his peripheral. And Nasruddin's team kind of put come on, what are you doing here? When I asked Nasruddin, does Sean do anything that you need to worry about that maybe Kelvin didn't? Does he present anything unique? He basically just said he has a big mouth and talks a lot, so I'll have to watch out for that. And then when I asked Nasruddin,
he can't speak English.
What's that?
He can't speak English. So
I know.
What does it fucking matter?
There's just something's going on there. And then he did say,
I think he said something bad. I'm going to punch him.
And he did say when he wins, he'd be more than happy to face Pajeda if Pajeda needs somebody to fight, which I don't think that'll be the matchup he gets next. But it just goes to show you where his mindset is. A couple things, as you guys pointed out, you mentioned Punahele Soriano and Dan Ige, both of them on this card together, which has been pretty cool to see those pictures of them in high school together. And,
I had no idea until I saw that picture.
I knew they were friends, but I didn't know they were that close of friends. I knew that they
went
knew
that
each
far
other.
back.
Yeah,
they were so young. That was so cool. That's so cool to see a shared story like that.
And Ige was great today because Dan's so honest about stuff, right? And Dan, I love the line where he said, we would sit together and we would talk about being in the UFC, like even if we didn't really necessarily believe it, because that's fair, right? Like you're talking about it and you're just some kid in Hawaii. You're like. dude, you're not really going to make it. But I thought that was so cool to say, hey, man, we talked about it. Now we're here. We're fighting back-to-back. Both of them in very tough matchups. Both are slight favorites according to the odds makers. Ige, a little bit smaller favorite over Damon Jackson, which I completely understand. Puna Soriano, minus 155 over Roman Kopylov. So both of them are favorites, but very, very slight favorites. I will say some competitive matchups on here. Ketlin Vieira versus Raquel Pennington means something. Ketlin is not always in the most exciting fights period, but this is number 2 versus number 5. Rocky Pennington was in just a phenomenal mood today, man, and just obviously talking about having the baby with Tisha Torres, and she's in a really great space that she has more clarity and motivation than ever before. So honestly, a lot of really competitive matchups at the top of the card. I will say the odds again, and it seems to be every time Umar Nurmagomedov fights, he's like a minus 900. I'm staring here. He's a minus 950 at the line that I'm looking at with Raoni Barcelos as a plus 650. I will say I understand why. Umar is this stud, and I think everybody's high on him for a reason. I will say Raoni's a little bit maybe better than most people are giving him credit for, but I just get it. Umar's tough. I will say something that Raoni said today, which stood out to me, and I think Umar needs to do the same. Raoni was like, look, I've been in the rankings before. I went here. I should get back in the rankings, of course, because I beat the number 11. He's like, and then I'm going to call out Merab Dvalishvili. And I think that is smart, man, for anybody, because that's the dude that nobody wants to fight, who can't fight for the title, at least for right now. Now Aljamain's hurt. I think if Umar wins, I think that's a great call out right there, because I think he could potentially style. I mean, Merab is a dangerous matchup. I love that fight. I would love to see Umar and Merab. I think that'd be a great fight.
That's a great fight.
So I don't know. That's fine.
And Merab's not shy about Georgia and that.
Yeah, dude. I think it'd be nobody calls out Merab. So if you win and you call out Merab, they know they can't match him up ever, man. I think that would be a phenomenal. So that's just my recommendation to Umar Nurmagomedov. You want to get up to the top of the rankings quickly, because look, there's a lot of talented dudes in that bantamweight division, and it's hard to jump by them. But if you call out the dude that nobody ever calls out, then
and he wants to stay busy.
Yep.
And he's the kind of guy, I don't think Merab's a diva. I think he would fight.
I know. I love it. You guys, any other key observations or favorite moments of today's media day that you took out, or was it all just kind of
just get
Dana
through it. Just Dana.
It's funny actually, while we're sitting here, so the BBC, who fucking never cover the UFC, they have an article about Dana.
Really?
And the narrative is similar to what we've seen, is that he will not be punished, and it's a weird one, man. That situation, I sort of thought maybe Dana would draw a line under it today, but I'm sure it'll, what he said today, I think, will probably be taken by people and interpreted in multiple different ways, and we're going to see the reaction to this, and then he'll have to react to that, and so on and so forth. So this story might have some legs in it yet.
I think he gave all of his interested parties, though, all the ammunition that they need to be like, hey.
Yeah.
He went there and talked to everybody.
Yeah.
He said his piece. He's apologized.
Yeah.
So we'll see. We'll see how it goes from here. It is. I mean, look, there's going to be people that are calling for Dana's head regardless. There's no question about that. There's going to be people that are critical of our coverage of today.
By the way, I can't even say those people aren't necessarily wrong for calling for his head. It's just their particular stance on this situation.
Yep. I would much prefer to see positivity come out of it, and I hope that the UFC will continue to perhaps look at advocacy and, again, helping victims of domestic violence, which I think would be much more beneficial to the world than to getting rid of Dana White. Like the world does not improve if Dana White is not the president of the UFC. So we'll see how it plays out, but we did get our first discussion with him. That is the UFC on Saturday. We'll certainly be there covering it. Of course, if you want the and a half episode, head on over to patreon.com/the MMA Roadshow for as little as $3 a month. You can sign up and help support the show over there, even if you're not willing to take that step and take it to the next level. Even if you can take a second to just log in and rate us, review us, give some feedback on all the social media or wherever you're listening. That would be great. By the way, one championship as well. They've got another event. That'll be Friday night, so it's another one in prime time North America. It's taking place in Thailand. I like that. Well, we're dropping that prime time.
They paid for that. They paid for that spot. They said, "Hey, bro, can you give us that prime time jingle?" I said, "Yeah, baby, prime time."
I love it.
It was a cheap
If you
spot.
get that in a post-fight presser on Saturday,
Prime time.
Prime time. How does it feel that you went out there and competed?
You went out there, brother.
Prime time.
Challenge accepted.
I bet you don't. And it has to be high pitched too. You have to get prime time.
You think people just be like, what is going on?
Just do it to one of the non-native English people.
Oh yeah,
That's the
they'd be like,
easiest.
he seemed very animated.
But then what would be great is if the interpreter then does whatever.
If it's Fabiano would totally do it.
Oh yeah, dude, if Fabiano's there, you have to do it, Kenny.
All right, fair enough. If it's Fabiano, it's on.
Shout out Fabiano getting like the fucking like, Fabiano's like, he'll do it, bro. Yeah. That's so funny. He's got a rep.
I will say, if you're around on Friday night and you got Amazon Prime, which I'm sure everybody does, it is, I think, a card worth watching. It is in Thailand, so the top 2 fights are kickboxing matches there. But obviously, this is one of the things that one does well because they're going to these other sports. They're able to get the absolute best in the world in these sports instead of just doing MMA and just trying to get what they can. Submission grappling is on the table as well. Mixed rules super fight between Stamp Fairtex and Anissa Mexen, which if you've never seen Anissa Mexen, she's got to be my favorite women's striker of all time. She is incredible on there. Rod Tang is on there as well. He's always exciting. Gary Tonin is back against Johnny Nunez, the father of Misha Tate's parents. I don't know if they're married. I think they're married, right? Aren't they?
I don't know.
Father of the kids.
Like, what?
Yeah, it's a weird situation,
I don't think
He's a
they're
little bit
married.
older.
Yeah.
That's why.
I don't think they're married.
That's why I went with father, because I'm not sure if they're married or not.
But they're definitely together.
Partner.
I mean, like they're partnership. Yeah, they're definitely partners. But yeah, I don't know if I've ever heard them getting married.
I know.
Well, we've got into one
this day and
family's
age, you
business
don't really
today.
need
It's
to
not
get
into the others.
Enough of that. I know that there's Cold Coffee will be tuned into the live card afterwards that'll be on YouTube featuring Ekaterina Venderyeva. I believe that.
I've already got it on the
You've already got
TV.
it dialed in
it's
over
already
there.
waiting.
I had a feeling you might be watching that one. So definitely a card worth catching on Friday night on Amazon Prime. Dude,
Lotion's ready.
tell you what, man. I'm
Because I have dry skin.
Yeah. On your cock.
so ridiculous.
It's the weather changing. My legs change.
So ridiculous. I'll tell you what. I know this year has not started out well. Based on the news that we've had and based on the passings that we've had, and but I am I am
Are
primed
you
up
Amazon Prime?
to see kind of how these organizations do this year, man. You got I think like one championship is in a better place than they've ever been. I understand that people say that but these primetime shows.
Yeah.
These primetime shows, they're good. You got Bellator that's going to CBS. They're doing network television this year. PFL, I thought, finished strong last year. So, I don't know, man. I'm knocking on wood. Got my fingers crossed that even though this year has started out pretty crappy, I think it could be a decent one for the sport this year.
I just think 2022, it felt like there was a lot of big fights that were being built to rather than being made. And this was the year that we're going to see them made. And so I would like to see us make those fights, like Hamzat Colby, Francis John. These are all fights that have been discussed for a long time.
Right.
Let's get them done.
We're still talking about them, and we don't even know. Like it's not we have them on the count. There's a bunch of big ones out there. Like like John Francis, got to see that.
Let's get these fights done.
Yeah.
Let's have 2021 was big. You had 2 Conor fights. 2022 I think took its foot off the gas a little bit.
Yep.
Hamzat didn't fight that often. Nate fought once. I'd like to get some big fights,
I love it. Well, I'm excited. Hopefully it'll go good. Glad to get back to some action because this period away has been a little too long, and I'm happy to get back in this routine.
Well, next week we'll have to figure something out because next week I will be in Brazil.
That is right. Maybe if you could just bring your gear and go outside to the patio out there to the little
cabana across the way.
Oh, man,
I'll make sure it's really late.
I don't know if they've got some great cold beer over there for a very respectable price.
So next week might be interesting. We'll have to talk about it and figure that out.
Yeah.
Whether
I'll
it's,
be there. We could do a segment.
Yeah, maybe
I'm inviting myself onto it, but
depending on the time, we could always try to do even like a StreamYard or something.
Ooh,
we can figure something out.
We'll figure it out. We'll
But
make
yeah,
it
from the
happen.
safety
they have
of a
computers
hotel.
in Brazil.
Well, I was gonna say, and I say that, but the internet's probably shit. But yeah, maybe the streaming video might not be.
Yeah, it might be tough. We just have to see. Maybe it's improved. We haven't been down there in several years.
Yeah.
It is exciting to get Brazil going on. Obviously, not the greatest of political times for Brazil, but
So next week should be interesting. Yeah.
In many ways.
Yeah.
We'll figure out a way. We're not going to not do a show.
Yeah,
That's not
we're
going to
gonna do a
happen.
show.
407 consecutive weeks since the day we started. We've never missed a show. Won't start now. We'll figure it out. We'll recap everything that happened on the and a half this weekend, and we'll talk about it all next week.
On prime time. Sorry, that was
In the
bad.
meantime, thanks for listening.